Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Kayleigh McEnany just wipes the floor with Cenk Uygur, and Chris Cuomo couldn't even bail him out in this situation. This is absolute must-see TV. But before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to our great sponsors over at Colonial Metals Group. They quite literally have the cure to Biden inflation and Harris economics, but more on that later. Now, let's dive in.
So, Kayleigh, I put it to you. Isn't Donald Trump a giant failure on his signature issue? It's, in fact, almost inarguable.
No, he's not a giant failure. And first, I want to correct your fallacy that he puts kids in cages. A lot of those pictures were from the Obama administration, so nice try doesn't work. We have a crisis on our hands. Do you acknowledge that at least, Cenk, that we have a crisis when you have 1 million people
Kayleigh,
set to come in this fiscal year, more than the population of Miami and Atlanta? Do you at least acknowledge that that's a crisis?
So, Kayleigh, who's in charge? Do you know who the president is? He's the guy who said he was going to stop that.
Do you understand we have three branches of government?
One at a time. Let Cenk answer.
Okay, look, under Obama, we had less undocumented immigrants than we do under Trump. Trump said, I'm going to get tough, and I'm such a tough guy, and I'm going to separate the families. I'm going to put the kids in this place and the parents and the moms in the other place. I'm so tough. And what do we have? We have more undocumented immigrants, not less. It's a 13-year record. He's a miserable failure on this issue. If they voted for him thinking he was going to stop undocumented immigrants, he didn't even do that. And now we have an absolute disaster on our hands because he doesn't know how to address the core issue. Why are they coming in the first place? You just think if you punch them in the face that they're going to go away.
Right.
That's not
Kayleigh,
why.
go ahead. Respond.
Cenk, we have seen a steady incline in illegal immigration, starting under the Obama administration and continuing to now. The only person who has taken any interest in stopping this in the last 4 decades is President Trump, who secured money for 450 million miles of the wall. Excuse me, 450. Excuse me, did it work? It's going to work. It's going to be built, the 450 miles, by the end of next year. We've just got the funding for this. What if you
Zero chance it's built by next year. Don't give yourself a deadline you're not going to meet. But he has put the money there. We hadn't had that kind of money put there before. Your problem, Kayleigh, is it wasn't the right fix for the problem. I'm not against physical barriers. I certainly don't think they're immoral. I think it's about a priority. And it wasn't the brown menace. These people flooding through our gates right now, they are majority kids and families. It's not a fence as a fix away. It's not a fix away, that's a fence.
It's dangerous for the kids. Just last week, we had a 6-month-old child who was taken across the Rio Grande River by a 55-year-old man who was not her father. Why? Because we have the TVPRA, which incentivizes crossing with a child because you are allowed to stay in this country.
That is a rule change that should be addressed.
Of course it should.
No,
we must have a wall. Do you care about the 70,000 Americans who die of drug overdose, much of which crosses our southern border?
Okay, Cenk, I get it. You were a big fan of George W. Bush in the early 2000s and then realized there was an untapped market of young, impressionable liberals that weren't having their voices heard. So you grifted and you started your own YouTube channel called The Young Turks. And listen, I get it. I'm also on YouTube too. So I understand. All right, it's a market, and you're catering to the market, right? Then at least you can have the guts to admit the truth. And that is that Barack Obama was the deporter-in-chief, and yet you are here trying to argue with Kayleigh McEnany that Trump is the real problem. A pro tip, if you ever have to say that something is the real problem, it means you've already lost. It doesn't matter that you might be right. It doesn't matter that you might be pointing out that reverse racism, no, it's just racism. Okay, the real problem, no, it's just a problem. A better way to frame it is to talk about the bigger problem, and that is more and more illegal immigrants are flooding across our border. And there's a multitude of reasons for this. First off, they're incentivized by foreign nationals. All right, the reality is that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, does try to push people from Latin America into the United States. They do this because they love to weaken the Western powers. That's just what they do. That's the sad reality. You can accept this, you can ignore it, I don't care. Hey y'all, I'm not exactly looking at retirement anytime soon, but my parents are, and friends of my parents are, and I'm sure either you or someone you know is looking at retirement and wondering, what do I do? How do I help prepare for this in this economy with this terrible president and with a vice president who basically coup d'etat'd him and is now looking to run for president herself? How do you protect against this? Well, simple. You go over to my friends at Colonial Metals Group. They quite literally have something called the Retirement Package Plan. This plan backs your wealth with gold and silver accounts. And furthermore, you will have direct access to these accounts. So you're not at the whims of Wall Street. You're not at the whims of inflation. You are in command of your own destiny. As a bonus, qualified applicants can receive up to $10,000 in free silver, plus a couple of other little goodies that they're going to package up for you, and you're going to be able to protect your wealth and your retirement. So go over to this link in the description below at colonialmetalsgroup.com or call this number 800-203-0422 and see how they can help you prepare for retirement today by backing your account with gold and silver. Don't delay your retirement, folks. Protect the money that you earned with Colonial Metals Group. They're here to help. The reality is, this happens because the Chinese do not respect the West because they think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But that's a small problem. A bigger problem would be, the cartels quite literally trafficking human beings, particularly children, across our border. That is a problem of huge human scale. And then Alejandro Mayorkas, under the current administration, has been so bad that he's lost nearly 200,000 children. They knew where they were at one point, but they're so bad at their jobs in our federal government that they've lost them. They don't know where they are. And now we keep on getting these reports of these factories employing underage people who aren't documented. We don't know why they're here. And sometimes we do know, because we will see the tattoos that the cartel will put on their arm for identification. All right, the last time we heard about tattoo identification, it didn't exactly end well, and there's these things called gas chambers that were used. That is the scale that we're talking about here. There are millions of people inside the United States. The old number of 12 million, that was 12 years ago. Might not exactly be 12, but it does roll off the tongue now, doesn't it? But that's the point. We don't know how many undocumented workers are here. We don't understand the real scale of the problems. And now we're seeing tax dollars at the federal, state, and local level going to individuals that aren't citizens. Meanwhile, we still have people that are missing up in North Carolina. And as a Georgia boy, I saw some of the devastation. We got spared up here in Atlanta, but they didn't get spared in South Georgia. They weren't spared in the Florida Panhandle. They weren't spared in South Carolina, and North Carolina got the worst flooding in Smoky Mountain history. And we could be using resources to help these people, but we don't. We don't. And it is a sickening truth that the Democrat Party cares more about these migrants coming in than they do about the people that were naturally born here. All right, this hurts people in the inner cities. This hurts people who actually need the help, who need a handout and a hand up just for a brief moment to relieve them of the pressure. The pressure of the Bidenomics that has just continued to make a mess of things at the macro and microeconomic levels. The inflation rate, it still hasn't gone down. We're lucky right now because currently the Biden administration is smart enough to know that if you decrease certain levels of spending, if you put pressure on the Fed to lower certain interest rates, prices are going to go down. So it looks like things are fine, right? Wrong. You could not be more wrong. And Kayleigh McEnany is just standing up for Trump. All she's doing is reminding Cenk Uygur that, hey, this was worse under the Obama administration, and now this take from Cenk is aged like milk because things have gotten worse under Joe Biden, and they'll continue to get worse under Kamala Harris. That is the sad reality, that this crisis that we're facing is something of our own making, and it's often exacerbated under Democratic control because they don't believe in the middle class. They don't believe in the small startup business. They don't believe in entrepreneurship. They believe that there should be a rich and a poor, and the rich should subsidize the poor. That's how they view the world. I guess that's how you can view things when you live up in your ivory tower. And Cenk, who enabled the children of these rich white liberals, is now running with this story, trying to make Trump look bad, when the reality is he's been the best thing we've had since Reagan. You know what? I need to make one small correction. He's the best thing we had since Clinton. And Clinton was smart enough to cut deals and work with the Republican Party. He worked with Newt Gingrich. He got spending under at least some control, and Congress was doing its job. Well, the last time Congress did its job, they got so mad at Newt Gingrich that they kicked him out. That is how corrupted our system is. We deserve good people in our Congress. We deserve good people in our legislatures. We deserve good people as our governors, our executives, our judges. We deserve this as Americans. We deserve good government. We don't have that. At least we're not going to have that under a Democrat administration, because they are now the party of the status quo. That used to be the Republican Party. It is no longer. But if the status quo is okay, then yeah, Harris might be your gal. You might actually think that Tim Walz belongs at your backyard barbecue. Okay, we can disagree. We have the First Amendment. But that is under threat now. And when you have people like Cenk Uygur trying to blame all these problems on Trump when they were pre-existing and then got worse under Democrat control, you have to start wondering on which side is his toast being buttered. Kayleigh McEnany doesn't just make a great point. She is trying to hold her own as Chris Cuomo is basically carrying water for Cenk and almost rescues him out of the situation. That is how bad our media is. That is what things are like under Democrat control. And it's only going to get worse. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.